How on earth do you get from a simple, mindless bacterium to Johann Sebastian Bach? It sounds impossible, right? Well, that's one of the biggest questions there is, and today we're going to dive into it, using the philosopher Daniel Dennett as our guide. We're going to trace that exact evolutionary line that somehow connects the two.
So Dennett kicks things off with a question that sounds super simple, but it's really not. He doesn't just ask what minds are. He asks, how come they even exist at all? And maybe even weirder, how is it that a mind can even think to ask that question about itself? That's the big mystery we're digging into. And look, this journey we're about to take, it's just mind-bogglingly long. We're starting billions of years ago with bacteria, right? Tiny life forms with absolutely zero understanding of anything. Then we'll fast forward through millions of years to when the first animals show up. And then, and this is the wild part, we're going to jump to just the last few thousand years. I mean, that's a blink of an eye in cosmic time. That's when human culture and language just exploded onto the scene, setting the stage for what Dennett chicly calls intelligent design. You know, the creations of someone like Bach.
Okay, so to really get this journey, you have to wrap your head around a pretty radical idea. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it's the engine that drives all of evolution. And it's this. You can have incredible, amazing competence without any understanding whatsoever behind it.
All right, let's break that down. Think of it like this. On one side, you've got comprehension. That's the what for. You know, an architect understands why she needs to put a flying buttress on a cathedral. She gets the purpose. But on the other side, you've got pure competence. That's the how come. A colony of termites can build this incredibly complex, air-conditioned mound. It's a masterpiece of engineering, but not a single one of those termites has a clue about architecture. They just do it. They have the skill, the competence, that evolution baked right into them.
And Dennett really nails it with this quote. He says, the blind, purposeless churn of evolution creates these amazing solutions. It's not proof of some intelligent designer pulling the strings. It's like a blind watchmaker, right? It just stumbles upon these genius designs without any plan or purpose or understanding. And this bottom-up way of doing things, it's the foundation for, well, everything in nature.
Now, this whole concept of bottom-up design was so revolutionary, it literally required us to flip our thinking upside down. And Dennett calls these strange inversions. And they came from two absolute giants, Charles Darwin and Alan Turing. These guys completely changed how we think about creativity and intelligence.
So first up, Darwin. Before Darwin, pretty much everyone assumed a kind of trickle-down theory of creation. You know, some higher intelligence, a god or a cosmic designer, created everything from the top down. Well, Darwin flipped that on its head. He gave us the bubble-up theory. Design doesn't come from on high. It bubbles up from the bottom, from this mindless, messy process of natural selection. It's a way to get all this amazing design and creativity without needing a creator.
And then, about 100 years later, Alan Turing comes along and does the same thing for the world of information. He had this brilliant insight. A machine doesn't need to understand what math is to do math perfectly. Nope, it just has to follow a bunch of simple, mindless instructions. That's computation without comprehension. And that idea, it is the absolute foundation of every single computer, every smartphone, every AI we have today. So when you put Darwin and Turing's big ideas together, you get something, well, it's a little unsettling. It's this truth. All the amazing complexity, all the intelligence, all the comprehension we see in the world, and yeah, that includes what's happening inside our own heads right now, it all comes from stacking up layers and layers of mindless, unthinking competence. Okay, but wait a minute, what about us? What makes humans so different? If everything is built on this mindless competence, how did we end up with so much comprehension? Well, the answer, the secret sauce, is that we got a massive software update, culture. And that upgrade turned us into something Dennett calls a Gregorian creature. So to see what that means, Dennett lays out this kind of ladder with 4 types of creatures. Way at the bottom, you have Darwinian creatures. They're just hardwired. They're born with all their skills. Then you get Skinnerian creatures. They're a bit more flexible. They can learn from trial and error. A step up from that, you get Poperian creatures. Now, these are clever. They can test out ideas in their heads before they act in the real world. You know the saying, let your hypotheses die in your stead? That's them. But that final step, the Gregorian creature, that's us. And it's a total game changer because we don't just think in our heads. We use the world around us as an extension of our minds. Think about it. We have this huge toolkit of, well, thinking tools. Some people call them memes. And we basically download them into our brains from our culture. I'm talking about things as basic as words and arithmetic and writing, but also clocks, money, maps, even huge ideas like democracy. None of this stuff is in our DNA. They are cultural technologies that we learn, and they give our biological hardware a massive, massive upgrade.
And here's the really critical parts. These tools don't just help us think better. They give us completely new things to think about. Take the word tree. It doesn't just let us point at a tree. It creates a concept of tree that we can now play with in our heads. We can think about a family tree or a decision tree in programming. The word itself creates a new mental object. It's how we pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, from pure competence into real comprehension.
Okay, so this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, and honestly, this is the most mind-bending part of Dennett's whole idea. It's where we basically turn our minds inside out to look at the nature of consciousness itself.
So, after all this, after this huge journey from mindless bacteria through all these cultural upgrades, we're still left with the biggest question of all. If our brain is just a bunch of mindless, competent bits and pieces, all supercharged with cultural software, then what is this? This inner voice, this movie playing in our heads that we call consciousness? Dennett's answer? He says consciousness is an evolved user illusion. Now, hold on. I know the word illusion sounds like he's saying it's not real, but that is not what he means. It's absolutely real. It's not what we think it is.
Okay, the best way to get it is to think about the desktop on your computer. You see all those nice, neat folders and icons, right? That's a user illusion. It's a super simplified interface that's hiding the insane complexity of what's actually going on underneath. All the transistors, the logic gates, the ones and zeros. The desktop isn't a lie. It's just a really useful, simplified model. Well, according to Dennett, our consciousness is the brain's version of that desktop.
So why would evolution bother to create an interface like this? Well, it's because we're social animals. We live in groups. We constantly have to explain ourselves to other people, give reasons for what we do, and ask them for their reasons. So consciousness gives us a simplified version of ourselves, a self, that we can talk about. It lets us become the user of our own brain, so we can manage it and, crucially, explain it to the rest of the tribe. And that's the journey, from a mindless bacterium all the way to a mind that builds its own user interface to navigate its social world. But Dennett's idea leaves us with a pretty stunning question, especially for right now, in our own age of so-called intelligent design. For thousands of years, we've been building cultural tools, words, numbers, governments, that literally rebuilt our minds. But now we're building tools like AI. So if our own minds are the result of our tools, what on earth is going to happen when our new tools start thinking for themselves?